For 3,000 years, humanity has searched for one object, one chest, one sacred artifact that, according to ancient tradition, carried the very presence of God. The Ark of the Covenant. It is one of the most famous lost objects in all of human history. It has inspired epic films, fueled archaeological expeditions, and captured the imagination of believers and skeptics alike. According to ancient texts, it was a chest of acacia wood overlaid with pure gold. It contained stone tablets inscribed with divine law. It was carried before armies, and it was housed in the holiest chamber of the most sacred temple in Jerusalem. And then it vanished. The Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BCE. They burned the temple to the ground. They took the sacred vessels as plunder. But the Ark, the most sacred object of all, is conspicuously absent from the Babylonian records. It simply disappeared. Where did it go? Was it destroyed, hidden, taken to a distant land? For thousands of years, theories have multiplied. Traditions have formed. Nations have built their identities around claims of possessing it. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims the Ark rests in a guarded chapel in Aksum. Jewish tradition holds that it was hidden beneath the Temple Mount before the Babylonians arrived. Some ancient texts say the prophet Jeremiah hid it in a cave on Mount Nebo. Medieval legends place it in the hands of the Knights Templar, carried to England or France. But here is the crucial question that this documentary will honestly confront. What can we actually know? And what remains only legend, tradition, or speculation? The mystery is not simply that humanity has failed to find the Ark. The deeper mystery may be that, for thousands of years, civilizations have continued searching for a sacred object whose last confirmed historical trace may have disappeared before the modern world ever had the chance to examine it. This is the story of that search, a journey through scripture, archaeology, history, and tradition, separating what is proven from what is only believed. Chapter 1. The Sacred Chest of Moses. Long before the Ark vanished from history, it was born in tradition. According to the sacred texts of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the Ark traces its origins to one of the most pivotal moments in religious history, the revelation at Mount Sinai. The Hebrew Bible describes the Ark in extraordinary detail. In the book of Exodus, God commands Moses to build a chest of acacia wood. It is to be 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, roughly 4 feet by 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. It is to be overlaid with pure gold, inside and outside. A gold lid, called the mercy seat, is to be placed on top, with 2 hammered gold cherubim facing each other, their wings spread over the lid. This was not merely a container. It was understood as the earthly throne of the divine presence. The space between the cherubim was considered the meeting place between God and humanity. When the high priest entered the Holy of Holies once a year on Yom Kippur, the Ark was the focal point of the entire ritual. It was the heart of Israelite worship. The contents of the Ark, according to the biblical account, were the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments. The book of Deuteronomy specifies that Moses placed the tablets inside the Ark. Later traditions, reflected in the New Testament's letter to the Hebrews, add that the Ark also contained a golden jar of manna and Aaron's rod that budded. These were sacred relics connected to the wilderness journey of the children of Israel. The Ark was not simply a religious artifact. It was understood as the embodiment of divine presence and power. When the Ark went before the Israelite army, victory followed. When the Philistines captured it, plague struck them until they returned it. When King David brought it to Jerusalem, he danced before it in celebration. The Ark was the sign that God was with his people. Now let us turn to the Islamic tradition. The Quran mentions the Ark, but with significant differences from the biblical account. The key passage appears in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 248. This verse comes in the context of the story of Talut, known in the Bible as King Saul. The children of Israel had asked their prophet to appoint a king for them. Their prophet said to them, "Indeed, the sign of his kingship shall be that the ark will come to you. In it there will be tranquility from your Lord and relics of what the family of Moses and the family of Aaron left behind, carried by the angels. Indeed, in that is a sign for you, if you are believers." This verse contains several important elements. The Arabic word used is tabat, which means a chest or box. The Quran describes the ark as containing sakina, tranquility, peace, reassurance, divine presence. It also contains baqiya, remnants or relics left behind by the family of Moses and the family of Aaron. The classical Islamic commentators elaborated on what these relics were. Ibn Abbas, a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, stated that the remnant referred to Moses' staff and remnants of the tablets. Qatada said that sakina meant grace. Our rabbi said it meant mercy. Ath-Thori mentioned that the contents included a pot of manna, remnants of the tablets, Moses' staff, and 2 shoes belonging to Moses. Ibn Kathir, one of the most respected medieval commentators, wrote that the tablet contained Moses' staff and the remnants of the tablets. It is important to note what the Quran does not mention. It does not describe the physical construction of the ark in detail. It does not give its dimensions or materials. It does not say what happened to the ark after the time of Talat. And crucially, it does not offer any guidance on where the ark might be found today. The Quranic mention is specific to the context of the story of Talat. The ark appears as a sign of prophetic authority and divine favor, and then the narrative moves on. There are also narrations within Islamic tradition that speak of the tablet being connected to earlier prophets. Some scholars mention narrations from Imam al-Baqir, suggesting that the box in which the infant Moses was placed in the Nile became the ark that was later used by the children of Israel. Some Sunni exegetes suggest that God gave Prophet Adam a tablet that was passed down through generations of prophets. However, many Islamic scholars caution that these detailed narratives fall under the category of Israeliyat, narrations derived from Jewish and Christian sources, which cannot always be relied upon as authentic. The Islamic perspective therefore presents the ark as a sign of divine authority and a vessel for sacred relics, but it does not provide a detailed account of its construction or its ultimate fate. The Quranic mention is brief, contextual, and leaves many questions unanswered. This is a crucial point, because it means that the Islamic tradition does not claim to solve the mystery of the ark's disappearance. It simply records its significance at a particular moment in history. So across the 3 great Abrahamic traditions, the ark occupies a central place, but the details differ. Judaism and Christianity preserve the elaborate construction narrative from Exodus, while Islam focuses on the ark as a sign of prophetic authority in the time of Talat. All 3 traditions agree on its sacredness. None of them provide a definitive answer to the question of what happened to it. Chapter 2: The Ark in the Age of the Kings. The ark's journey through history is a story of movement, war, and shifting religious centers. In the biblical narrative, after the wilderness wanderings, the ark was housed at Shiloh, a religious center in the hill country of what is now the West Bank. Recent archaeological excavations at Tel Shiloh, conducted in 2025 and 2026 by the Associates for Biblical Research, have uncovered a monumental Iron Age structure that some archaeologists argue matches the biblical description of the tabernacle. Over 100,000 animal bones were found at the site, primarily from the right side of animals, which suggests ritual sacrifice consistent with ancient Israelite practice. However, this identification remains a theory. The structure has not been definitively proven to be the biblical tabernacle, and scholarly caution is warranted. According to the biblical account in 1 Samuel, the ark was captured by the Philistines in battle. The Philistines took it to their cities, but wherever the ark went, plagues and misfortunes followed. Eventually, the Philistines returned it to the Israelites. It remained at Kiriath Jearim for many years until King David brought it to Jerusalem. The biblical narrative describes David's joy as he led the procession, dancing before the ark. David's son Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem. The ark was placed in the Holy of Holies, the innermost and most sacred chamber of the temple. According to 1 Kings, this happened during the Festival of Tabernacles. The priests brought the ark into the inner sanctuary, and when they withdrew, the cloud of divine presence filled the temple. The ark remained in that chamber, accessible only to the high priest and only on the Day of Atonement. Now we must ask an uncomfortable historical question. How much of this is actually supported by archaeological and historical evidence? The historical reality is that we know very little with certainty about the period of David and Solomon. The biblical accounts were written centuries after the events they describe. They were shaped by religious and political concerns. Archaeologists have found no definitive evidence of Solomon's temple. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, where the temple is traditionally believed to have stood, has been rebuilt and rebuilt again over millennia. The area is now occupied by the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Excavation is almost impossible due to religious and political sensitivities. There are two main camps among historians and archaeologists. The minimalists argue that the biblical accounts of David and Solomon are largely legendary. They contend that Jerusalem in the 10th century BCE was a small tribal settlement, not the capital of a great empire. The maximalists argue that the biblical accounts are broadly historically reliable and that David and Solomon did rule a significant kingdom. Most mainstream scholars fall somewhere in between. They accept that David and Solomon existed, but question the scale and grandeur described in the Bible. What is historically documented is that Jerusalem was a significant city in the Iron Age. Archaeologists have found substantial fortifications and buildings dating to this period in the city of David, the ancient core of Jerusalem. The stepstone structure, a massive stone support wall, is one of the most impressive Iron Age finds in the region. It indicates that Jerusalem was a major urban center, not a village. However, connecting these archaeological remains directly to Solomon is difficult. There is no inscription that mentions Solomon. There is no contemporary extra-biblical evidence for his kingdom. The ark's connection to Jerusalem is therefore based entirely on religious tradition. We have no archaeological evidence of the ark ever being in Jerusalem. We have no non-biblical records mentioning it. The ark is mentioned in the Bible, but the Bible itself is a religious text, not a modern historical document. Historians must treat it with care, using it as a source while acknowledging its limitations. This does not mean the ark never existed. The description of the ark is consistent with the cultural and material context of the Late Bronze Age and Early Iron Age, roughly the period from 1400 to 1000 BCE. Portable shrines and ritual chests were known in the ancient Near East. Egyptian temples used similar objects in their processions. The ark's design, as described in Exodus, has parallels with Egyptian ritual furniture, so the ark could have existed. The form is plausible, but the biblical narrative of its history is a religious account that cannot be independently verified. The period of the kings, from David to the Babylonian destruction, lasted approximately 4 centuries. During this time, the ark was traditionally housed in the temple. It was the symbol of God's covenant with Israel. It was the heart of national worship. And then, in 586 BCE, everything collapsed. Chapter 3: The Disappearance. This is the chapter where history and mystery converge. The disappearance of the Ark of the Covenant is one of the great unanswered questions of antiquity. And we must be honest from the start. We do not know what happened to it. The historical facts are these. In 586 BCE, or possibly 587 BCE according to some chronologies, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem. The city fell. The walls were breached. The temple was burned. The population was exiled to Babylon. The Babylonian Chronicle, a contemporary cuneiform record, confirms the campaign. It records Nebuchadnezzar's military activities in the Levant, including his attacks on Jerusalem. The archaeological record also confirms the destruction. In excavations in Jerusalem, archaeologists have found layers of ash and debris dating to this period. The destruction was real, and it was devastating. Now we come to the crucial detail. The Bible lists the items taken from the temple by the Babylonians. In 2 Kings 25, verses 13 through 17, we read a detailed inventory: the bronze pillars, the bronze stands, the bronze sea, the pots, the shovels, the snuffers, the basins, and all the bronze vessels. The gold and silver items are also mentioned, but the ark is not listed. It is conspicuously absent. This silence is striking. The ark was supposed to be the holiest object in the temple, the very seat of God's presence. If the Babylonians had taken it, surely the biblical writer would have mentioned it. The fact that it is not mentioned suggests that it was not there to be taken. Either it was removed before the destruction, or it was hidden, or it had already been destroyed or lost at some earlier point. This silence has generated countless theories over the centuries. Let us examine the main possibilities. First, the ark could have been destroyed during the Babylonian conquest. The temple was burned, and the ark, made of wood overlaid with gold, could easily have been consumed in the fire. The golden overlay would have melted, leaving no identifiable trace. The wooden core would have burned to ash. This is the simplest explanation, and in many ways the most historically probable. The absence of the ark from the Babylonian inventory would be explained if it was destroyed in the fire. However, the biblical text does not say this. It simply does not mention the ark at all. Second, the ark could have been captured by the Babylonians and taken to Babylon. The Bible does record that the sacred vessels were taken, but the ark is not among them. This could be an oversight, or the biblical writer could have had a reason for omitting it. Some scholars have suggested that the writer may have omitted the ark to avoid the theological difficulty of God's presence being carried away into exile. If the ark was taken, it could have been destroyed in Babylon or melted down for its gold. There is no evidence to support this theory, but it is a possibility. Third, the ark could have been hidden before the Babylonian destruction. This is the theory that has inspired the most traditions. According to 2 Maccabees, a Jewish text written in the 2nd century BCE, the prophet Jeremiah received a divine instruction to hide the ark, the tabernacle, and the altar of incense in a cave on Mount Nebo. Jeremiah sealed the entrance to the cave, and the location was lost. This tradition is late. It was written more than 3 centuries after the Babylonian destruction, but it is ancient and persistent. Mount Nebo in modern Jordan is a site of great significance. It was from there that Moses is said to have viewed the Promised Land. In 1933, a church and monastery were discovered on the site, but no evidence of the ark has been found. Fourth, the ark could have been removed before the destruction and taken to another location. Some scholars point to 2 Chronicles 35, which mentions that King Josiah moved the ark during his religious reforms. The text says, "Put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David king of Israel built." This has been interpreted by some as indicating that the ark was removed from the Holy of Holies and then restored. If it was removed and never restored, it could have been hidden elsewhere during Josiah's reign, decades before the Babylonian destruction. Fifth, the ark could have been destroyed or lost before the Babylonian period. Some historians note that the prophet Jeremiah, writing around the time of the Babylonian crisis, prophesied that the ark would no longer be remembered or missed. In Jeremiah 3:16, the prophet says, "And when you have multiplied and increased in the land in those days, declares the Lord, they shall no more say, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. It shall not come to mind or be remembered or missed. It shall not be made again." This prophecy has been interpreted to mean that the ark was already lost or would soon be lost, and that its absence would not be a tragedy because God's presence would be with the people in a new way. There is no consensus among historians and scholars. Each theory has its proponents and its problems. The destruction theory is simple and plausible but lacks explicit textual support. The captivity theory explains the absence from the inventory but lacks evidence. The hiding theory has ancient textual support but no archaeological confirmation. The removal theory relies on a specific interpretation of a single verse. The lost before destruction theory has prophetic support but no historical evidence. We simply do not know, and that is the honest answer. The Ark disappears from the historical record in 586 BCE, and from that point forward, every claim about its fate is speculation, tradition, or theory. Chapter 4: The Search Through the Centuries. The disappearance of the Ark did not end its story. In fact, it began a new chapter, a chapter of searching. For 3,000 years, countless traditions have attempted to answer the question, where is the Ark of the Covenant? Let us examine these traditions carefully, separating what is documented from what is only believed. The Jewish tradition offers multiple perspectives. The Talmud, the compendium of rabbinic law and commentary compiled between the 3rd and 5th centuries CE, preserves a debate. Rabbi Eliezer stated that the Ark went into exile in Babylonia. Rabbi Judah son of Lachish stated that the Ark was hidden in its own place, meaning beneath the Temple Mount. The Jerusalem Talmud mentions a stone in the Holy of Holies where the Ark once stood. Some rabbinic sources suggest that King Josiah, foreseeing the destruction, commanded the Ark to be hidden in a secret chamber beneath the temple. This tradition has persisted for centuries and has inspired many searches. In 1981, Rabbi Yehuda Getz, the rabbi of the Western Wall, explored tunnels beneath the wall in search of the Ark. He claimed to have found a chamber that might have been the hiding place, but the entrance was quickly sealed by Israeli authorities due to political and religious sensitivities. No independent verification has been possible. The Christian tradition, particularly in the Eastern Orthodox and Catholic churches, has also preserved traditions. The Book of 2 Maccabees, which is included in the Catholic and Orthodox canons but not in the Jewish or Protestant canons, records the Mount Nebo tradition. It says that Jeremiah hid the Ark on the mountain, along with the tabernacle and the altar of incense. The text adds that the location would remain hidden until God gathers his people and shows mercy. This tradition is ancient but late, and it has never been archaeologically confirmed. There is also a curious European tradition. Between the 1100s and 1745 CE, some historical records from St. John Lateran Basilica in Rome listed the Ark of the Covenant among the church's treasures. This claim is mentioned in several medieval inventories. However, the claim is not well documented, and the object listed may have been a replica or a misidentification. If the Ark had been in Rome, it would have been one of the greatest treasures in Christendom, and its fate would have been recorded. The silence is telling. Now we come to the most famous and persistent tradition of all, the Ethiopian tradition. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church claims that the Ark of the Covenant is preserved in a small chapel adjacent to the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion in Aksum, in northern Ethiopia. This claim is deeply embedded in Ethiopian national identity. The Ethiopian tradition is based primarily on the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of the Kings, a 14th century compilation. The Kebra Nagast tells the story of the Queen of Sheba, who visited King Solomon in Jerusalem. According to the story, the queen returned to Ethiopia and bore Solomon's son, Menelik. When Menelik grew up, he visited his father in Jerusalem. The companions who accompanied Menelik, however, secretly took the Ark of the Covenant from the temple without Solomon's knowledge. They took it to Ethiopia, and it has remained there ever since. The Kebra Nagast is a foundational text for Ethiopian identity. It establishes the Solomonic dynasty, which ruled Ethiopia until 1974. Emperor Haile Selassie I, the last emperor of Ethiopia, traced his lineage to Solomon and Sheba. In his 1931 and 1955 constitutions, he codified this biblical connection. The Ark is not merely a relic in Ethiopia. It is the foundation of Ethiopian imperial legitimacy. But we must ask, what is the historical value of the Kebra Nagast? It was compiled in the 14th century CE, more than 2,000 years after the events it describes. It is a religious and political document, not a historical record. There is no contemporary evidence that the Ark ever left Jerusalem. There is no independent historical or archaeological verification of the Ethiopian claim. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is deeply committed to the tradition. The Chapel of the Tablet, as it is called, is strictly guarded. Only one monk, the guardian of the Ark, is allowed to enter. Access is restricted to all others. No scholar has ever independently examined the object inside. No archaeological excavation has ever been permitted. The Church's claim is based entirely on religious faith and tradition, not on empirical evidence. Stuart Munroe, a leading expert on Ethiopian history, critically examined the Ark claim in his book, The Quest for the Ark of the Covenant. He concluded that the tradition is a later construct, serving dynastic and political purposes. He found no historical evidence to support the claim that the Ark was ever in Ethiopia. His assessment is shared by the vast majority of historians and archaeologists. However, we must not dismiss the Ethiopian tradition lightly. It is a living religious tradition that has sustained a community for centuries. For Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, the Ark is not merely a legend. It is a reality of faith. It is venerated, prayed to, and celebrated. Each Ethiopian Orthodox Church has its own tablet, a replica of the Ark, which plays a central role in worship. The tradition is real, even if the historical claim is unproven. So where does this leave us? The Ethiopian tradition is powerful, ancient in its current form, and deeply meaningful to millions of believers. But it is not a proven fact. It is a religious belief, and it must be respected as such, but it cannot be treated as historical evidence. Chapter 5. The Ark and the Archaeology of Jerusalem. Archaeology is the most powerful tool we have for understanding the past. It can confirm or challenge traditions. It can uncover lost cities and forgotten artifacts. So, what has archaeology discovered about the Ark of the Covenant? The honest answer is, nothing directly. No archaeological excavation has ever found the Ark, no inscription mentions the Ark, no artifact bearing the name or depiction of the Ark has been unearthed. But archaeology has revealed much about the world in which the Ark was said to exist. The Jerusalem Archaeological Park and the City of David have yielded extensive remains from the First Temple period. The step-stone structure, the large stone structure, and the water systems all date to the Iron Age. They show that Jerusalem was a fortified city with a sophisticated infrastructure. The material culture is consistent with the biblical description of the time of David and Solomon, though it does not prove their specific histories. The Temple Mount is the most sensitive and difficult site in all of archaeology. It is sacred to three major religions. The Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque occupy the platform. Excavation is almost impossible. The Islamic Waqf, which administers the site, strictly prohibits archaeological excavation. Even limited salvage operations are controversial and politically charged. The soil and debris that have been removed from the Temple Mount have been subjected to archaeological examination, and they have yielded valuable information about the history of the site. But the Ark has never been found. One of the most important recent developments is the work at Tel Shiloh. Shiloh is identified as the site where the Ark was housed before the Philistines captured it. The excavations of 2025 and 2026 have uncovered a monumental Iron Age structure that some archaeologists claim matches the dimensions of the biblical tabernacle, as described in Exodus 26. The discovery of over 100,000 animal bones, with a preponderance of right-sided bones, suggests ritual sacrifice consistent with biblical law. The excavation also uncovered hundreds of burned olive pits and organic remains, indicating intensive use of the site. Director Dr. Scott Stripling of the Associates for Biblical Research has argued that the structure aligns with the biblical description. However, the identification remains a theory, not a proven fact. There is no inscription at the site identifying it as the tabernacle. The dating and function of the structure are still debated. It is a promising discovery, but it does not tell us anything about the ultimate fate of the Ark. Another recent development is the work of archaeologist Chris McKinney, who proposed in 2026 that the Ark may be hidden in underground spaces in the city of David. McKinney and his team are using non-invasive technology, including muon detectors, to identify hidden chambers beneath the ancient city. Muon detectors are a cutting-edge technology used in archaeological and geological surveys. They detect subatomic particles that penetrate the ground, allowing researchers to create three-dimensional images of underground voids. McKinney's theory is that the Ark was hidden in these underground spaces before the Babylonian destruction. He notes that the city of David contains numerous tunnels and caves, some of which have not been fully explored. The use of muon detectors is a promising approach, but it is still in its early stages. No hidden chambers have been definitively identified as containing the Ark. The theory is speculative, though it is based on legitimate archaeological methodology. We must also acknowledge the limitations of archaeology. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The fact that we have not found the Ark does not mean it never existed. It could have been destroyed, leaving no trace. It could have been hidden in a location that has not yet been excavated. It could have been taken to a foreign land and lost. Archaeology can tell us a great deal, but it cannot tell us everything. On the other hand, absence of evidence cannot be used as proof that the Ark still survives. The claim that the Ark is hidden beneath the Temple Mount or in Ethiopia requires proof. The burden of evidence lies with those who make the claim, and to date, no such proof has been provided. The archaeological search for the Ark is complicated by political, religious, and legal factors. The Temple Mount is controlled by the Islamic Waqf, and non-Muslim visitors are restricted. Excavations in East Jerusalem and the West Bank are politically contentious. The Ethiopian Church has refused independent examination of the Aksum Chapel. These constraints mean that even if the Ark is hidden somewhere, we may never be able to confirm it through archaeology. Chapter 6. The most famous theories. Over the centuries, many theories have been proposed about the fate of the Ark. Some are grounded in ancient texts. Some are modern speculations. Some are based on archaeological hints. And some are entirely fanciful. Let us examine the most famous theories with honesty and rigor. Theory 1. The Ark is hidden beneath the Temple Mount. This is perhaps the oldest and most persistent theory. It is based on the rabbinic tradition that King Josiah hid the Ark before the Babylonian destruction. The Talmud records this tradition, and it has been passed down through generations. In 1981, Rabbi Yehuda Getz explored the Western Wall tunnels and claimed to have found a chamber that might have been the hiding place. He reported that the water in the chamber was unusually cold, suggesting that the chamber was deeper than expected. He was blocked by Israeli authorities, who feared that the search would provoke conflict with the Muslim authorities. The theory is plausible but unproven. There are known tunnels beneath the Temple Mount, and the area is filled with ancient stonework and chambers. However, no archaeological excavation has been permitted. The theory remains in the realm of speculation. Theory 2. The Ark is in Ethiopia. This theory is based on the Kebra Nagast and the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition. It is a living belief with deep roots. However, it has no independent verification. Stuart Munrohay critically examined the tradition and found it lacking in historical evidence. The restricted access to the Aksum Chapel means that scholars cannot examine the object. The theory is a matter of faith, not of archaeology. Theory 3. The Ark was destroyed during the Babylonian conquest. This is the simplest and most historically likely theory. The temple was burned and the Ark, being made of wood and gold, could have been destroyed. The gold overlay would have melted and the wood would have burned. This would explain why the Ark is not listed among the Babylonian spoils. The theory is accepted by many historians. However, it is not explicitly stated in any ancient source. It is an inference from the silence. Theory 4. The Ark was taken to Egypt. This theory has been proposed by several researchers, including some who have noted the Egyptian connections in the Ark's design. The theory suggests that the Ark was taken to Egypt after the destruction of Jerusalem. There is no evidence for this theory, but it has been explored in fiction and popular books. Theory 5. The Ark was taken by the Knights Templar. This is a medieval legend that has been popularized in modern times. The Knights Templar were a crusader order that was active in the Holy Land. Some traditions claim that the Templars discovered the Ark beneath the Temple Mount and brought it to Europe. Graham Phillips, a popular writer, has suggested that the Ark was taken to England. There is no historical evidence for any of these claims. They are based on later speculation. Theory 6. The Ark is hidden in a cave on Mount Nebo. This theory comes from 2 Maccabees, which records the tradition that Jeremiah hid the Ark on Mount Nebo. In 1981, Tom Croster published a book claiming to have located the Ark on Mount Nebo, but his claim was not substantiated. Excavations on Mount Nebo have found a church and monastery, but no evidence of the Ark. Theory 7. The Ark became a symbolic object. Some scholars argue that the Ark was not a literal physical object but a symbol. They suggest that the descriptions of the Ark in the Bible are theological constructs, not historical descriptions. This is a minority view among scholars, but it has been proposed by some critical historians. The majority view is that the Ark was a physical object, but its fate is unknown. Theory 8. The Ark is hidden in the city of David. This is the most recent theory, proposed by Chris McKinney in 2026. McKinney argues that the Ark was hidden in underground chambers in the city of David before the Babylonian destruction. He is using muon detectors to search for hidden spaces. The theory is promising but unproven. Each theory has its strengths and weaknesses. None of them can be definitively proven or disproven with the available evidence. The search for the Ark is therefore a search that is as much about faith and tradition as it is about history and archaeology. Chapter 7. What does the Islamic tradition actually say? We must return to the Islamic tradition with careful attention. The Quran is the primary source for Islamic knowledge, and it speaks of the Tablet in a specific context. The Tablet, or the Ark, is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 248. This verse is part of the story of Talut, who is identified by Islamic tradition as the king appointed to lead the children of Israel after the time of Moses. The verse reads, "Their prophet said to them, 'Indeed the sign of his kingship shall be that the Ark will come to you. In it there will be tranquility from your Lord and relics of what the family of Moses and the family of Aaron left behind, carried by the angels. Indeed, and that is a sign for you, if you are believers.'" Let us examine this verse carefully. The prophet speaking to the children of Israel is identified by most classical commentators as Samuel. The children of Israel had asked for a king, and God appointed Talut. The Ark was to be a sign of his legitimacy. When the Ark came to them, they would know that Talut was indeed the chosen king. The Quran mentions 3 things about the Ark first. It contains sakina, which is often translated as tranquility, peace, or reassurance. It is a divine presence that brings calm and certainty. Second, it contains baqiya, which are remnants or relics left behind by the family of Moses and the family of Aaron. Third, the Ark is carried by angels, indicating its sacred nature. The classical commentators elaborated on these elements. Ibn Kathir explained that sakina means grace and mercy. He identified the relics as Moses' staff and remnants of the tablets. Al-Tabari, another great classical scholar, collected various reports about the ark. Some said it was made of wood and covered with gold. Others said it contained a pot of manna, the miraculous food that sustained the children of Israel in the wilderness. Some added that it contained Moses' shoes and staff. It is important to note that the Islamic sources do not provide a detailed description of the ark's construction. The Quran does not mention the golden cherubim or the mercy seat. It does not give the dimensions. The focus is on the ark's function as a sign of divine authority, not on its physical form. Now we come to the crucial question: what does the Quran say about the fate of the ark? The answer is nothing. The Quran does not mention the ark after the story of Talut. It does not say what happened to it. It does not tell us where it is today. The Quran is silent on the matter. Islamic scholarship has grappled with this silence. Some classical commentators have suggested that the tablet was lost or destroyed after the time of Talut. Others have noted that the ark is not mentioned in later Islamic sources. The overwhelming majority of Islamic scholars do not claim to know where the ark is. The Islamic tradition does not have an authoritative answer to the question. This is a significant point. In contrast to the Ethiopian tradition, which claims possession of the ark, and the Jewish tradition, which often claims it is hidden beneath the Temple Mount, the Islamic tradition does not assert knowledge of its location. The Quran records the ark as a historical and religious artifact, but it does not make any claim about its current whereabouts. This intellectual honesty is important. It means that the Islamic tradition does not need to be defended against archaeological contradiction. It simply does not make the claim. Some Islamic narrations, including some categorized as Israeliyat, mention the ark being hidden in a cave or transported to various locations. But these are not considered authoritative in the mainstream Islamic tradition. They are reports from other religious traditions, and they are treated with caution. Many scholars of Islam have pointed out that the Quranic narrative is concise and does not invite speculation about the ark's ultimate fate. So what does the Islamic tradition teach us? It teaches us that the ark was a sign of divine authority, a vessel of sacred relics, and a source of tranquility. It teaches us that the ark was connected to the prophetic tradition of Moses and Aaron, but it does not teach us where the ark is today. The Islamic tradition is silent on that question, and that silence is itself a form of wisdom. It tells us that some questions are not meant to be answered in this life. It tells us that faith is not dependent on finding a physical object. The Quran reminds believers to focus on the signs of God that are evident all around them, not on lost relics of the past. Chapter 8: The object that history could not confirm. We have traveled through scripture, tradition, archaeology, and history. We have examined the evidence and weighed the claims. Now we must confront the central question honestly. Do we know where the Ark of the Covenant is today? The answer, based on the available evidence, is no. We do not know where the Ark is. We do not know if it still exists. We do not know if it was destroyed, hidden, captured, or taken away. The last confirmed historical trace of the Ark is the period of Solomon's Temple. After that, the Ark disappears from the historical record. What do we know with certainty? We know that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. We know that the temple was burned. We know that the ark is not listed among the items taken to Babylon. We know that the Quran mentions the tablet in the context of the story of Talut. We know that the Ethiopian Orthodox Church maintains a tradition of the ark in Aksum. We know that Jewish tradition holds the ark was hidden beneath the Temple Mount. These are facts, but they are facts about traditions and texts, not about the ark itself. What is historically probable? The destruction of the ark during the Babylonian conquest is the simplest and most plausible explanation. The ark was made of wood covered with gold. In a fire, the wood would burn and the gold would melt. The resulting mess would be indistinguishable from other melted gold and ash. The Babylonians would not have listed it as a valuable item because it would not have been recognizable. This theory has the advantage of simplicity and consistency with the archaeological record. What is possible? Many things are possible. The ark could have been hidden. It could have been taken to Babylon. It could have been removed by King Josiah. The absence of evidence leaves the door open to many possibilities, but possibility is not probability, and possibility is not proof. What is only tradition? The Ethiopian claim is a tradition. The Mount Nebo tradition is a tradition. The Temple Mount hiding tradition is a tradition. These are religious beliefs, not historical facts. They may be true, but they have not been confirmed, and they cannot be presented as proven facts. What remains unknown? The fate of the ark remains unknown. It is one of the great mysteries of antiquity, and we must be comfortable with that uncertainty. The honest historian does not invent answers. The honest scholar acknowledges the limits of knowledge. The search for the ark is a search that has spanned 3,000 years. It has inspired explorers, scholars, and believers. It has generated countless theories and traditions, but it has not produced a discovery that has been universally accepted. The ark remains hidden, lost, or destroyed. Perhaps the deeper mystery is not that we have failed to find the ark. The deeper mystery is that, for 3,000 years, humanity has continued searching. The ark has become a symbol of the human longing for the divine, the desire to connect with something greater than ourselves, the hope that the sacred can be found in the physical world. The Quran reminds us that the true signs of God are not in lost relics, but in the natural world and in the moral order. The Bible reminds us that the presence of God is not contained in any object, but is accessible through faith. The Ethiopian tradition reminds us that the ark can be a focus of devotion and identity, even if its physical existence cannot be proven. So the Ark of the Covenant remains what it has always been, a symbol of God's covenant, a symbol of divine presence, a symbol of the human quest for meaning. Its physical location may never be known, but its spiritual significance endures. The Ark of the Covenant has been sought for 3,000 years. It has been the subject of epic films, scientific expeditions, and theological debates, yet it remains unfound. We have examined the sources with honesty and rigor. We have distinguished between what is known and what is believed. We have respected the traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam while maintaining academic integrity. The Quran mentions the tablet as a sign of divine authority, but it does not claim to know its whereabouts. The Bible describes the ark in detail, but it falls silent on its fate after the Babylonian destruction. The Ethiopian tradition is a powerful living faith, but it is not independently verified. The archaeological evidence is suggestive but not conclusive. What can we conclude? We can conclude that the ark may have been destroyed. We can conclude that it may have been hidden. We can conclude that it may have been taken. But we cannot conclude any of these with certainty. The search for the ark is a reminder of the limits of human knowledge. It is a reminder that some questions remain unanswered. And it is a reminder that faith is not dependent on finding physical relics. The sacred is not contained in objects. The sacred is found in the moral life, in the search for truth, and in the relationship between humanity and the divine. The Ark of the Covenant may never be found, but the search continues, and perhaps that is the most profound mystery of all.